We are live. This is Life, Liberty, and the Pursuit of Podcasting. I'm Timothy Iyer, and I'm joined today by Jack Turan, another fellow Liberty lover. You want to introduce yourself, Jack?
Hey, my name is Jack Turan. I'm actually the treasurer of the Greater Rochester Libertarian Party, all around Liberty lover in every aspect, pretty much of my life. I wear many hats in my life, so I'm pretty versatile and pretty much what I can pretty much talk about. And whatever you bring up, I'm willing to engage in.
All right, sounds good. You can talk a little louder too.
Okay.
So this week I figure I got a couple topics that we're going to talk about. This week there was rioting in Milwaukee. Have you seen any of this?
Not seen, but I've read a little bit about it. There's been obviously a rash amount of rioting pretty much around. There's obviously lots of tension between the African American community and the police. In my opinion, stems mainly from the drug war.
It certainly is directly stemmed from the drug war.
But some of the rioting, some of it, you can understand with the Milwaukee. It's just people just want to riot for the sake of rioting, in my opinion.
Oh yeah, I'm sympathetic to the cause.
Yeah.
If you oppress someone, violence is inevitable for sure. But there was a couple things that disturbed me.
Yes.
Some little background on this. A black officer shot a black male.
Yeah.
And how did they retaliate this? They burnt down their own community and they attacked white people for being white.
Yeah.
If there's nothing more racist than that, I don't know anything more racist than that. To attack someone, to initiate force and physical violence against someone for merely the color of their skin is a definition of racism.
Yes.
So what they're fighting against, they are doing to others. What the hypocrisy needs to be pointed out. And like I said, I'm sympathetic to the ideas and the gripes, if you would, of Black Lives Matter. But don't give me this shit because they're doing the same things that they're bitching about.
Yeah.
Give me a break.
Yeah. That's the impression that I got from the Milwaukee was, this guy had a stolen pretty much gun. The cops approached him. He ran. He didn't really drop his gun at all. And when the cops pretty much approached him, he still had the gun in his hand. So in that situation, he got shot. And then there was obviously a delayed reaction. The rioting didn't really start right away. They had to incite. And you find that sometimes, at least with Ferguson and to a lesser extent Baltimore, I could understand why some people would go to the streets. But this case, there was really no reason, in my opinion, for that to happen. And it's just, it just goes to show you some of the true colors of some of the extremists within that Black Lives Matter movement. And as well as some of the, it really bothers me that they would go around and destroying the very businesses and,
that are giving them the goods and services that they need to get to work. They're smashing up bus terminals. How are people going to get to work the next day?
It just makes them look bad. I don't blame all Black people for the incidences of a few of them.
Right. Of course not. We're libertarians.
Yeah.
Well, an interesting philosophical. You'd said inciting a riot. Can speech incite a riot, and can that be punishable in your estimation?
Well, that goes along to the argument of yelling a fire pretty much in a movie theater and stuff like that. You have to be responsible pretty much for the words that you do bring out. As words do have an effect on people. Saying that, if somebody just says something inflammatory to you, you have to be able to pretty much put it in perspective too. You have to be able to exercise some form of self-control. The person saying these words, is it really threatening me in any way? most of the time not. It might threaten your pride, and I guess that might
Pride
incite
or
some
ego.
people to, more violent activities. With me, it's just like, no, that's not gonna bother me at all.
Right, because I think words, you're responsible for what you say, and we can call you an asshole for it, but you're not responsible for what your words, how people interpret them, and how they decide to take their own action, because destroying private property is already a crime.
Yeah.
So how can someone be charged with inciting a riot when they're not the ones actually physically doing anything? If it's just words, I'm not talking about being the first person to tip over a cop car or the first person to throw a Molotov cocktail through a window. I'm talking about purely puritanically, just the words that you're espousing.
I mean, even the lady whose brother was shot, she pretty much says, don't take it to our neighborhood. But go to the burbs where the white people are and do some damage. That's what she pretty much said.
Yeah.
And,
because a black cop shot a black
it's just
kid.
Like, this is not going to help, to those that are haters who hate blacks and stuff. It's not going to help them love you anymore. You're just simply instigating the stereotypes that they already pretty much have of you. Again, with me, I can differentiate. I realize that, most of them are good people. And you got, and there's some, you could say there's some systemic stuff going on here. And as a libertarian, I think the libertarians have all the best solutions to the problems, but the status quo doesn't want those solutions because they want power and control. They want people to be divided. And
of course, I think like it was interesting what you said. It is pretty much a cause of the war on drugs, right around. And I find it ironic that the Civil Rights Act was pushed through in 1964, I believe, and in 1968 the war on drugs was declared.
I don't know. I think that was Nixon.
Oh, it's 72 possibly.
So Nixon. I mean, the official term "war on drugs" I think came around the Nixon era. I think that was or 70s.
Yeah, early 70s. So I think they found a different way to oppress people by criminalizing personal behaviors.
I mean, a lot of the reasons why a lot of these drug laws came into effect was to keep out pretty much whoever they considered undesirable, whatever minority group that they find undesirable,
the flavor of the week.
Now it happens to be, black people.
Well, it's really interesting. I wrote an article. I just started recently writing for a publication called The Libertarian Vindicator. And I wrote an article, Why the War on Drugs is Unconstitutional and the Negative Impact it has on society. And doing some research for that, I found it very disheartening that the earliest drug laws that we seen in America was race baiting and fear mongering towards certain minority groups. The very first drug laws that you seen against opiates was because in the 1870s, all the Asians coming over for the railroads.
So it wasn't just the blacks. I mean, it was whatever minority.
And the first anti-marijuana laws were put through in the Southwest because of Mexican migrant workers. This was in the early 1900s. And the earliest form of cocaine drug laws were in the South, pushed towards fear of black people. And they actually, I remember there was an actual New York Times article. I'm pretty sure it's the New York Times article that they said they needed to change the rounds of their guns to bigger caliber because all these African Americans hyped up on this cocaine will be they will be invulnerable, or it wouldn't matter being shot with the current caliber round that they had because they'd be all hyped up on cocaine. And this is how I feel that the fear mongering is pushed through. And I feel like they just found a different way to oppress the masses and specifically the minorities. And, I like to say it's a war on poor people, because it is. And I think minorities are more susceptible to being poor.
Yeah.
Because the shitty schooling that government provides them. Look at the inner city schools. The inner city schools are the worst fucking schools in the country. And that's why I've been trying to push and articulate a voucher system here in New York.
Yeah.
And I recently talked to a candidate that's going to be running here for state assembly. And I asked him about school vouchers, and he looked at me like a deer in the headlights. He didn't even know what the fuck they were. And it's like, let's bring competition to this. Why would a parent send their child to school that is known that it is pushing failure?
Yeah.
These people, they have the worst graduation rates. Let's close these shitty schools.
Yeah. And it goes back to that power and control scheme. Pretty much, they want power and control, and what better to do that to the public education system with, to me, it's nothing more than an indoctrination on how to become a good, citizen, and they do teach you skills, but they do teach you skills to work for the man. They don't really teach you entrepreneurial skills. And if you look at it, like a lot of famous millionaires and CEOs, a lot of them dropped out of school and stuff like that. So you don't really even need that. But I mean, I'm more of an advocate of more of a self-directed form of learning. And most of the learning and stuff that I know now is outside of the institutional environment. I go to the internet, I go to Barnes and Noble and read. I love to learn. And I think it was Mark Twain that said, don't let education interfere with your learning. I probably just butchered that quote.
No, it's I know what you're saying.
Yeah. But education is the key, but I believe institutional education is not. I believe just the love of learning. You have to encourage a person to learn something, whatever it is, and you encourage whatever they happen to be passionate about. Because if you're passionate about something, you're going to learn it without much, without much direction. So I mean, the adult might be there to guide you, but you have to find whatever it is that you're truly passionate about. And that's what you have to do. And to me, there's no reason why you can't educate a kid, to me, on the internet. I mean, there's a lot of examples out there on the internet, like Khan Academy, and there's a lot of courses that are available on there. So, I mean, I have no problem with education choice. Vouchers are okay. But, homeschooling, self-directed learning, whatever helps you get educated so you can be a productive member, and contribute to the overall prosperity of society as a whole, is the best thing here. And it just isn't happening. I mean, to me, I could see it a mile away, because I consider myself a little bit more conscious than the average person. My journey of libertarianism pretty much started back in the mid-90s when I was in the Navy. I found a book in a room, par roommate had mentioned libertarian in it, and that started my journey towards investigating. And this was in the mid-90s. I got my first computer, and I just pretty much went online and did some research. I read some books.
Well, that must have took some time in the early 90s online. It'd take an hour to load up a web page.
I read books by David Boaz, Harry Brown, Mary Rural.
Oh, Harry Brown. What a treasure he was.
Mean, rest in peace. But
yes.
He's the first. When I became aware of the liberty movement, Harry Brown was the first president that pretty much ran. And I pretty much voted for libertarians ever since that time.
I've always said that in the public school is just indoctrination into nationalism.
Yeah.
And so when you teach kids to walk in a line, to raise their hand, to go to the bathroom, you're subconsciously teaching them to always respect authority, never question authority. And I think this puts us on a very dangerous path for our children. It's almost like training, if you would.
Yeah.
I I fear to use these words, but it's almost as if you're training a dog. It's a, you know,
Pavlov.
Yeah, so we kind of got a little off topic.
Yeah,
but
respect is something that obviously, in my opinion, has to be earned. And the best way to be a leader is to set a good example.
Yes.
And fortunately, people in authority demand respect. Like Cartman goes, respect my authority. You know, but I mean, respect has to be earned. You know, just not something, you know, hey, respect me or else, you know, I'm going to punish you.
Yeah.
You know, but
it kind of reminds me of one of my favorite George Carlin quotes. He said, you know, why do you have pride in being American? He said, be fucking happy to be American, but don't be proud. Pride should be reserved for something obtained or achieved through hard work. And I completely agree with that.
Having a healthy sense of pride is okay. I mean, of course, if you don't have enough, you get
be proud of your accomplishments.
But if you have a hubris, you know, that leads to being rigid. You know, a lot of racists, you know, pretty much have white pride, black pride. That's hubris. You know, you're rigid.
Yeah.
When that's, you know, so pride can go in either direction. Having a healthy sense of pride is good. But when you take it to one extreme or another, it could be devastating.
You know, that's really interesting. You mentioned white pride and black pride. I think there's a different set of standards set for minority groups to have pride in their race, but it's not okay for certain other races to have pride in theirs. And I think it's a bit of a double standard, but I understand it as well. I mean,
the white man's the one that's in power.
That's the one doing the oppressing
everybody.
Yeah.
So they're the ones, I mean, in our current system, they're low on the totem pole as far as like anything, getting help from any, you know, form of government. I mean, but to me, if you need like any type of assistance from the government in any way, you have to start looking at yourself and what can you do to limit that dependency on a big government. I mean, because the government's they're not going to go away on their own accord. They're going to go away when you become self-empowered, self-sufficient, you know, find ways to solve problems that don't require the use of force. And there are plenty of solutions pretty much out there if you're just simply open to it. But the system, pretty much, people are very much addicted to big government. It's like an addiction to a drug, in my opinion. And you can either treat it, some people can quit cold turkey. I can give up government right away.
I could give up government tomorrow and it wouldn't change my life. Yeah.
Most people need a 12-step plan, pretty much. They need to, you know, be knowledgeable and see that there are solutions pretty much out there, you know, to any type of problem that are not. I mean, I believe in embracing the unconventional in pretty much anything that I pretty much do. And I always look for unconventional ways to solve problems. And I try my best to let people know about these things, but they have a saying, you can lead a horse to water, but you cannot force him to drink. You know, so that's the way I become with that. I mean, if I will offer my 2 cents and they have to make a decision on their own.
Right.
I'm not going to force them to do something that I consider good for them, because that's what governments pretty much do. They say, we're doing this for your own good or anything like that. I would be no different than they are. But you have to respect a person's decision, even if it's not your own.
Right, that's why I'm a libertarian. I want to show the masses the benefits of smaller government.
Yes.
And have them expose them to the benefits of smaller government. And that's how you were talking about the cold turkey. I could stop tomorrow.
Yes.
But some people can't. But if we can show them the benefits of a slow walking towards smaller government slowly and showing, hey man, this makes you more independent, this makes you more free. And that's all it's really about, is we should be free to choose the destiny of our own lives. But to get back onto the topic of Milwaukee. It's been devastating for that community, and I hope everyone stays safe.
Well, I mean, there's been a history
out
of
there.
tension there, and I mean, people there are poor, and they say Milwaukee or Wisconsin's pretty much one of the worst states as far as the treatment there of black people, and but this is just simply a pretty much a trend of rioting that's pretty much been going on, the tensions between the cops and the African American community. And as I said before, it's totally the drug war pretty much here.
Yeah.
And most people, I mean, to me, it's as light as day to me what the problem is, but the tensions are not going to pretty much ease anytime soon until, eventually you get to the core of what the problem is. Right now they provide treatment for symptoms, but they don't go to the core or essence of the problems that would actually help liberate both sides of the equation, whether they're African American or the cops. To me, I knew a bunch of cops when we used to work at a 7-Eleven. Most of them are probably decent people, but like anywhere you go, they're going to be bad apples, no matter what group of people. The problem is, you don't hold those people accountable. And when they don't see no accountability there, then tensions ends up rising high. And actually the best way to hold a cop accountable is simply through the use of technology by, making sure you're recording something, you know, and that keeps them pretty honest, whereas if there was no camera there, they might, be able to get away with more. Yeah, so I find that technology is actually being used in a way, because to me, you want accountability overall. And that's a problem with the system as a whole, is that there's a lack of accountability, not only amongst the individuals, but within the system of government as a whole. I mean, a politician commits a crime, they can do anything and get away with it. Whereas an average Joe, they committed the same crime, they're going away, so, there's pretty much no justice there.
Well, that kind of segues us smoothly into the next thing I wanted to talk about. Malia Obama was caught smoking a joint, hitting a joint at Lollapalooza. I can care less.
Yes, me neither. It's a non-issue with me. I mean, my first Lollapalooza was back in 1993, when I was in the Navy. I mean, but, it is a non-issue.
But is it hypocritical?
It is hypocritical on those people in power.
Her father, as president, is running a justice department that sends people away into cages for the same thing that his own daughter is doing, and she won't ever face any repercussions for her actions. And she was caught on camera. Yeah, the hypocrisy is there.
Yeah, I mean,
but it's a non-issue, like you said.
As a libertarian, I would say I pretty much will say, like, it doesn't matter. I mean, if you smoked, pretty much you're not, if you got caught or not. And I would just say it's never was an issue. And if you respect, a lot of the politicians say, well, then that's when they actually claim privacy, is when it happens to somebody in their family. Like, well, I agree with you, but you don't apply it pretty much to every other person in your system, so you come across pretty much as a hypocrite.
Yeah, because it's always someone else's child that's the criminal, never your own. And so, also in terms of marijuana, the DEA refused to reschedule marijuana down from a what is it called, a class 1
to class 2,
so they could do more research and things of that nature. It says, see, this is the problem I have with government. They are so bought into the war on drugs, and it's such a for-profit system at this point to criminalize personal use and personal habits that they can't even admit that CBD oil is treating people for their seizures.
Yeah, I've seen videos pretty much on it. I mean, I listened to Joe Rogan's podcast too, and he pretty much showed a video pretty much where, they're pretty much showing a video of a person in seizures, and they put the oil on the person's feet, and it stopped. You know, but that's, again, that is not that's an unconventional treatment. They want you to treat it conventionally through the long, arduous, and often not effective way of, you know, pharmaceuticals, or the medical way, which is a lot more expensive to me. I mean, I'm a advocate of holistics. I mean, I'm into all kinds of like holistic type of energy things. I'm into Reiki. I do body weight exercises. I do Wim Hof breathing, high intensity interval training, anything that where I take responsibility for my own health. And a lot of people just don't do that. They expect the system to take care of them. But I don't know about you, the system ain't helping you at all. And like, you look at like a lot of treatments, like for cancer, the conventional treatments have a very low cure rate. You hear of some success stories, you know, but most of them, it's better to not treat it. And then I can go and do research and tell you about all kinds of things that are relatively inexpensive ways that you can do, and cancer goes away, you know, but that doesn't fit the traditional narrative. So they come after those people harshly, you know, whereas, you know, pharmaceutical drugs properly prescribed kill a hell of a lot more people than all the other, you know, holistic type of stuff that they actually go after for much smaller incidences.
Writing this article, I was surprised to find that per capita, per 10,000 users of illegal drugs, has a lower death rate. And that's even comparing apples to apples. So we're just talking about one specific drug. We'll use heroin as an example. This kills less people a year than pharmaceuticals. And to go back to the marijuana thing, I think the big problem is that you can't patent a plant.
Yes.
That's another. So now they can't make money on it. And so the government decides for the rest of us that, no, we want you on these traditional medications
like Marinol and
stuff like Marinol. They found a way to turn it into a pill so they can make money off of it. And I have nothing against making money.
No. But I mean, there's a distinction that I often make. I mean, I love capitalism.
It's corporatism, though, right there. It's government combined with the pharmaceutical companies.
But it's corporatism. But I make a difference. I make a further distinction with capitalism. You got what I consider to be crass capitalism and conscious capitalism. I mean, there's a book written by John Mackey called Conscious Capitalism. I'm a big fan of that. And I'm more in the conscious capitalism. The crass capitalism will say, well, the pharmaceuticals do save lives. Oil revolves around our economy. But you look at the overall, you know, destruction that they potentially do, because, you know, they privatize the profits and socialize the costs. So like when and there's an oil spill, you know, who often bails them out? The public does, you know, but while they reap profits, I mean, all those industries are heavily subsidized. And to me, I'm more of an advocate of a truly energy independent policy that liberates the individual. So if you can pretty much run your home on solar panels or geothermal energy or whatever it is at lower costs, I'm totally all for that, because it liberates the individual.
I would rather pay a true free market value for my goods and services than to have something subsidized and end up paying for it with my taxes in the long run, because you're still paying for it either way if the government subsidizes a certain industry.
I don't believe in any subsidies, whether it's individual welfare or corporate welfare or anything. Actually, corporate welfare is a bigger. Well, those go into the lines of subsidies pretty much too. Like corn, it's heavily subsidized,
and we wonder why high fructose corn syrups and everything now.
Yeah, everything.
It's because we subsidize the corn, and there's so much left over.
Powerades, they probably have high fructose in them. I mean, I prefer pure cane sugar myself. I much rather deal
Absolutely.
with diabetes than that. But I can't stand any of the artificial sweeteners either. Those are even worse for your body because they screw around with a lot of your hormones and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I can't personally stand the taste of them, so I can't.
Yeah,
drink
sweet
them.
and low is awful.
You know, I can't.
I
Yeah,
can't
it's
do
like,
the unnatural sweeteners. What is the there's a certain chemical or something in there. What and it's been sometimes aspartame.
Yeah.
That's it.
It was saccharin back in the 80s. I think it was more saccharin. That was an artificial sweetener. And then you got aspartame. But I mean, you look at any of the diet sodas, and even to a worse extent, the 0-calorie sodas, those are loaded with all those pretty much artificial type of sweeteners.
Yeah, that's no good.
Stuff like that. You know, I can't. I don't understand why people even drink this stuff. They think they're going to lose weight, but it actually tricks your body, you know. But I mean, it's just ridiculous. I mean, but you know there's advertisements for it all over the place, and you know, and people are going to just say, oh, you know, that's what I'm going to go for right now. I mean, in essence, it's a decision, and to me, all choices, they have consequences. You're free to choose, but you're not free of the consequences of your decisions, for better or worse.
Absolutely. So, all right, we'll go on to the next topic here. DNC WikiLeaks, the leak. So Debbie Wasserman Schultz, this is a little in the past. Debbie Wasserman Schultz resigns, instantly takes a job on the Hillary campaign.
Yeah.
How can these people who were big Bernie Sanders supporters ever support Hillary Clinton after these leaks came out and proved that the game was rigged against him?
Yeah.
It was literally rigged against him. And these people are still supporting Hillary. It's sheeple 101.
Yeah.
These people are just voting party line no matter what. And that's disturbing. I mean, she's had multiple different cover-ups, and you know, so it's just
typical election year shenanigans.
Disheartening to me.
Yeah, I mean, there's, in my opinion, no redeeming quality to Hillary at all.
None whatsoever.
But there are not much more redeeming qualities for Trump either.
No.
You know, and so I mean, that's why I'm going the libertarian route. Though you always have those same tired arguments that you put in the other evil pretty much in the White House. They're both not going to be good. But you know what? Neither
of them ever had my vote, so don't tell me that I'm taking a vote away, because I would rather not fucking vote than to vote for one of them two tyrant authoritarian figures.
You look at the way the world's going right now, it's just like, okay, if one of them gets in, whoever it is going to be like Nero playing the fiddle while Rome burns. So then maybe libertarianism would pretty much, you know, maybe wait for another 4 years. I mean, we got some, not my favorite candidates running for the Libertarian Party, but they're playing a role this election cycle. And I think their role is to get more awareness of libertarianism pretty much as a whole, even though I prefer, I was pretty much a backer of John McAfee, but the Libertarian Party was in a unique position of, courting people on the outside looking in. And unfortunately, McAfee was the least palatable of those candidates, whereas Johnson and Weld are probably a little bit more palatable, and of course, they're going to get more grief amongst libertarians because libertarians know all the principles. But to somebody on the outside looking in, Johnson and Weld is pretty much the most sanest choice that you pretty much have out there right now.
It is. And I agree with you. He wasn't my first choice. Yeah. I was a big fan of Dr. Feldman.
Yeah, rest in peace.
Rest in peace. Great man. His ending argument at the debate, his rap, was probably the most epic rant.
It was the most memorable moment of that convention. Some people will say that guy running naked on the stage was it, but that's how
James Weeks shout out.
Yeah. Yeah, but the people on the outside looking in, who was already pretty skeptical, always look at that event as the reason why, well, you can't take this seriously. But I mean, it brings some levity pretty much to the moment. I mean, with Dr. Feldman, I mean, I admit he wasn't very impressive at the early portions of the convention, and he actually needed some last second people to put him on there, like Dr. Becker.
Yeah.
But he came strongly at the end, and obviously
explain to people who Dr. Becker is.
Well, he's a longtime member, activist in the libertarian community, local libertarian community
up here in Western New York.
Yeah. He was around. He did a lot of activism in the 80s, and then when I first joined, it was the Monroe County Libertarian Party, and he was a member there. And then we eventually became the Greater Rochester Libertarian Party, and he's one of our elder statements in the party. I mean, he's very good. He's at most of our events. He's a very good contributor and also a hell of an activist as well. With Tony DeRazio, we're talking about his campaign. Him and his daughters alone probably got the majority of signatures, pretty much.
Nice. Very good.
I mean, I've always had a deep respect for him.
So what did he actually do to help get Feldman into debates? Is that correct?
I forget. I forget exactly what it was. You needed a certain people had
a token or something like that.
Tokens, yeah. And a person, in order to get into debate, had to get a certain amount. I forget. It might have been 10%, but he was couple short, and Dr. Becker pretty much
rallied some folks.
Managed to get him into the debates.
That's awesome, because that was my guy going in.
Yeah, I admit
McAfee and Feldman were my two that I lined up ideologically with the best.
Feldman is definitely one of those unifying forces, pretty much.
He will be missed,
and then definitely people are going to be using those phrases, "I'm this kind of libertarian" or "that kind of libertarian" for years, based on what he pretty much had to say. So, unfortunately, he had to pass on, but his spirit will still live with you.
Yeah, he's the gold standard. The day that I found out that he died, I said, I'm that heartbroken libertarian.
Mm-hmm.
A little play on words from his little final speech at the debate. Which beautiful man, beautiful human being. One of the great stories that I heard from the debate was someone was hit by an automobile during the debate, or not during the debate, during the convention.
He was out there with a Canadian libertarian who happened to be, I think, an EMT or something like that, pretty much at the event. And they were out there, and it just goes to show you that libertarians do care about their fellow human being, but we just base it on voluntary and mutual exchange.
Right, voluntary. That's
all it comes down to. Me, my idea of compassion is helping others help themselves. And if you can,
it's the best form of compassion you can give.
If you help somebody and they're not willing to help themselves, you're wasting your time on them. You're wasting your energy. The Reiki community, where the subtle energies generally flow, and you have some people that are more givers and more takers, and the givers generally, the takers love the givers, because the givers are just constantly give to them, and those people. My mother's kind of like that. My mom will give you the whole house if you let her, and that's not a problem on her part, that other people take advantage of her. But sometimes you just like to remind you, this person's not really, has your best interest in hand. But I'm not going to tell you not to give, because that's in your nature,
right.
But, but sometimes some people just don't see that, and you just have to point that out to them. But
so to get back on the topic of Hillary here.
Mm-hmm.
So I know this has been out there for a while, but excuse me. Let me rephrase this. Hillary has been pressuring for Ecuador to revoke Assange's asylum status.
Mm-hmm.
This is pure corruption.
Yeah.
This is trying to hide the truth from the American people, and this is ridiculous. How much more corrupt can you get? You're afraid of the truth, and now that the truth has been revealed, most Democrats have turned a blind eye to it, and I just can't fucking get it. Where is the support coming from? how can these Democrats be supporting such a corrupt candidate? She's afraid of the truth. She's a known liar. She's the most unfavorable candidate that the Democrats has ever put up. And she's only gotten worse and worse.
Claim about the Republican.
That's absolutely right.
And that's why people, for the most part, both of them are the best. Have been pretty much the best recruiters for libertarianism, because they're pretty much alienating. Well, both sides are alienating. They're pretty much their bases, pretty much, and there are a lot of independent voters, and a lot of them seem to be leaning more towards the libertarian.
So Julian Assange did an interview recently. He said that Seth Rich, a man named Seth Rich, was the leaker for the DNC.
Okay.
A couple days after this, he was shot and killed on the streets of DC.
In that campaign, pretty much.
He was shot and killed in DC, and they called it a robbery.
Yeah.
And Julian Assange said, well, if it was a robbery, it was the worst robbery attempt ever, because he still had his wallet, he still had his jewelry.
Yeah.
And the reporter who he was talking to was like, wait, are you trying to insinuate that the campaign had something to do with his murder?
Exactly.
Of course he was. Yeah. And where will it end? Is pointing out people's corruption? Are they doing this because if she does become president, if someone does this, they're just gonna black bag you?
Yeah. Well, that's like a lot of people pretty much are gonna just say, I might just keep my mouth shut, because then I might
end up committing suicide.
Yeah. Suicide.
I
might get robbed.
I got robbed.
But we all know that what really happened there. But it's that kind. There's a burden of proof, and do you want to go through all that energy for something that's probably not going to? I mean, these politicians are going to lie anyways. I mean, same thing. I mean, that I go with like a lot of the 9/11 stuff. I mean, a lot of the truthers. I don't really go on board that train. But even if we knew who exactly did it, they're not going to be brought to justice. They're going to just lie through their teeth. And I think there's a lot of better energy to be used on the issues that are actually impacting us pretty much now. I mean, there's always a lot of these distraction issues that go on when there's bigger issues that need to be passed, like the TPP or something like that. They'll find like some Caitlyn Jenner issue or transgender bathroom issue, something to distract you so they can get by with their true atrocities and stuff like that.
So I'm not very well informed on the TPP.
It's supposedly an international type of trade agreement that,
Johnson
compromises pretty much sovereignty, pretty much American sovereignty and stuff like that. It could be a potentially nefarious deal. I do realize that Johnson and especially Weld are kind of like on board with it. Again, I don't nickel and dime them over some of those issues. Again, they're not my ideal candidates, but I'm not going to nickel and dime over some of the stuff that I might happen to disagree with them on. I mean, Governor Weld was the governor when I was in the Navy in Massachusetts. And they were both pretty decent governors. They were Republican governors in blue states, and they managed to, have a pretty fiscally responsible policies, and keep in mind, these are the executives in the state, so they can't really control the spending. They can use their veto power, which Johnson did pretty liberally,
Yeah.
There are people that say, well, the spending didn't really get cut. I'm going, well, what do you want the governor to do? It's not his power to control spending bills. He can just simply veto it, and they can also be overturned. But to me, they were pretty fiscally responsible in states where that wasn't pretty much possible.
Right.
So you have to keep it in context of the times, that they're pretty maverick Republican governors in their time.
They were. Governor Johnson and Governor Weld, our best case scenario is 2016.
Yeah.
This year gives us a unique opportunity. And if we get into the debates, if we are able to get 15% in the 5 polls and we get into these debates, all bets are off. I've kept saying this because the other 2 candidates are just so unlikable. And Gary Johnson, it's really beautiful what he's done. He's taken the high road. He hasn't attacked the person. He attacks the policy, and he talks about his policy, and he defends his policy. He hasn't got into this bickering on Twitter like Hillary and Trump do. It's like, what are we, fucking teenagers here? You're running for the highest office in our country, arguably the most powerful position in the entire world.
I mean,
you're bickering on fucking Twitter.
For as much as some libertarians will pretty much get on the case of Johnson and Weld for, you know, for obviously the issues where they're obviously not as libertarian on, you know, they're from a public that's on the outside looking in, they're the most sanest candidate to them. And if you're looking to bring people into the party, I mean, they're probably the best 2 for the job this election cycle, even if they're not ideal in the long term.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, they're great ambassadors to what we're trying to push. And just to get public recognition has always been such a hurdle that we can't overcome.
We've been on several town halls already, you know, and years beforehand, never see that pretty much happen.
No, there was just one on Fusion TV, which I think was the best town hall.
Okay.
Jorge Ramos, I believe his name is. He hosted it. Okay. And I think it was their best performance, much better than either of the 2 CNN town halls.
I didn't see that one.
It was really good. I enjoyed it thoroughly. But like I was saying, you know, I think Johnson and Weld are the best ambassadors to move our party forward. And you know, he could even possibly win outright.
Well, there's scenarios that could obviously happen. I mean, if it does, that would be great. If they get more than enough votes, you know, if they set records there, that's, again, great advertisement pretty much for the Libertarian Party. I mean, Ron Paul pretty much, he didn't win any elections, but for presidents, but he pretty much put libertarianism on the map in the minds of a lot of his followers.
Yes, he did.
You know, and again, some libertarians will say, well, he's not really a libertarian, it's a conservative. But I mean, that type of puritanical view, I don't really subscribe to. He did a lot more for the libertarian movement, you know, to put them in the public's eye, you know, than anything, you know, that you have to say. And he's truly principled. I mean, granted, he ran for libertarian president back in 1988. He wasn't in Congress at the time, so that enabled him to pretty much do that. And so, I mean, I'm not questioning his libertarian pretty much credentials pretty much at all. I mean, Rand Paul, I mean, he's still a maverick within the Republican Party, not his father. And it saddens me to see that he's playing politically expedient roles instead of principled pretty much roles that his father pretty much stuck to the very end. I mean, even Bernie Sanders pretty much turned out to be a hypocrite pretty much in the end, because he was rallying against Clinton all these times. And then when it came down to it, he made the politically expedient decision and betrayed pretty much all of his supporters.
Yes.
You know, so to me, he has absolutely no credibility with me anymore, because I thought Bernie was at least, you know, better than, more principled at the time than Hillary or Trump, you know. But now, I mean, he was offered a fig leaf by the Green Party, and he pretty much refused that. And I thought the Green Party would be a natural fit for Sanders' type of value system.
That kind of proves to me that he really wasn't in it to win it, because his supporters would have filed in the droves. They would have got him on so many state ballots that he could have mathematically won it. Because there's very few states that are very difficult to get onto. I think Nebraska and Ohio are some of the 2 worst states.
Oklahoma's also
Ohio has the sore loser law. So it would have been impossible to get on the ballot in Ohio. And Oklahoma, I think, just has a very high threshold for the amount of signatures you need.
Yeah. And this is brings us to the thing, you know, of attention. Even if they're not potentially going to win, I mean, they can help a lot of the grassroots candidates in the local or state running elections, and that's where a lot of McAfee's energy is pretty much going. I guess he has an organization, I forget the name of it exactly, but he pretty much encourages more of the grassroots politicians. And then we got pretty much a homegrown libertarian at home called Larry Sharpe, and
great man.
Outside of Feldman's speech, his video that he's shown, he had me in tears pretty much, what he pretty much, you know, had to go through to get to where he is right now. And I think if Larry Sharpe pretty much gets on the governorship, 50,000 votes to get us, you know, ballot status will be a breeze. I mean, when we had Warren Redlich, we just missed that. And we should have probably had it if they decided to count all the absentee ballots, you know, which they didn't. And then we took them to court. But by the time they ruled in our favor, it was too late. You know, but I think Larry Sharpe was one of these unifying forces that would definitely make 50,000 votes get easier. And that'll definitely make it a lot easier for libertarians in the future. You know, they won't have to write in on the voter registration. You know, right now, the state party, New York party, had to run a lot of debt to get a lot of the signatures. And that would totally be, you know, eliminated if we had ballot status, which, again, Larry Sharpe, which I'm totally on board with this guy, I think has a great chance of pretty much doing it. And we were just at we were at a leadership thing with one of his other guys who says he's going to be a board with him. And
Michael Pickens.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm praying
he's going to be a part of his campaign.
Yeah.
And he's actually going to be in Onondaga County. I think Larry Sharpe and I think Alex Merced pretty much is going to be out there. It was Onondaga, I think, a newly formed chapter. During our last GRLP meeting, we actually voted to donate $100 to Onondaga County so they can get in the state fair. They need something like $3,000, and I'm being the treasurer of the party. I pretty much went to their website. You can donate through PayPal, and we have a PayPal account. So I pretty much made that donation pretty much right away to them, and I contacted them saying, "Hey, we made a donation." But there's a gathering. Right, or I think it's August 27th. It's somewhere in Onondaga County. I mean, I won't be able to go to it because I got other conflicts pretty much that day. But I imagine we'll be seeing a lot of Larry Sharpe when he pretty much runs for governor. And I'd definitely be looking forward to seeing him, you know, on his road to the governorship.
I'm happy. We just started our chapter out here in Livingston County, and I'm happy that we're working out the kinks of our grassroots movement. We're going to be hanging door hangers for the Johnson Weld campaign here shortly. And so we have this time during the 2016 election to really be able to utilize and work out the kinks to how we can best effectively get Larry Sharpe the exposure that he needs on a grassroots level. Because let's face it, the two old parties do not go through the grassroots anymore, especially on state level.
They don't really have to.
They don't have to. And so that interaction that we have with the casual voter and the average citizen, I think will go a long way. You know, us making the effort, we got to work twice as hard than the two old parties and I think we do. We go out on foot. I'm going to wear the soles on my shoes out in 2016 and 2018.
And this is why getting ballot status, I think, is much more important than what goes on in this election. Getting ballot status for the governorship, it should be our number one goal, because then we won't be running into these problems, you know, of spending all our time, energy, and assets trying to get on these things, and that money can be better used, you know, the things that are going to promote the overall message of liberty.
All right. So, little local news here.
Mm-hmm.
New York state lawmakers have proposed a pay raise of 47%, which would make them the highest paid lawmakers in the entire country. What do you think about this?
It's always kind of funny when you hear about pay raises for people who
do they get to vote on their own pay? Yeah. They get to vote on their own pay raise.
Let me see
what
if
the
I
fuck
can
is
ask
this?
for a 47% pay raise at my job, and they'll probably laugh at me.
Laugh in your face.
But when you're controlling that portion of the budget, it seems to happen every year, and to me, I always laugh at it. I mean, what are they doing to pretty much earn their money? Let's go back to the days of the founders, where you pretty much have to, where it was a part-time job, you still had to make a living. And then representing your government was something you did pretty much because out of passion, out of a belief, in the system, instead of something
like a public servant.
Career. I got no problem with career politicians. I mean, I'm generally not for term limits. I think the voters are the term limits. Of course, the voters don't necessarily do a good job of that. But if somebody's very good at being a politician and you vote them in every year, I got no issue with that. I mean, of course, George Washington set the precedence. He voluntarily decided not to run.
Yeah,
so he set a personal example, and obviously, with I think it was Theodore Roosevelt, he could have ran pretty much forever too until that amendment pretty much came out, but I got no problem, if a politician's actually representing their people good, I got no issue if they're voting in and year out. But the problem is a lot of these who are not doing a good job get voted in year and out, despite people knowing about it, because, people pretty much vote out of the lesser of two evils, and what has voting like that brought us? More of the same, more of the status quo, more of the problems that we pretty much had.
Yeah. This 47% is completely ridiculous. I've seen out here we got Channel 13 Wham News. They conducted a poll. I believe it was Channel 13. It could have possibly been Channel 10, the NBC affiliate out here in Rochester. They had a poll, and 90% of people opposed it. Like 8% were unsure, and literally nobody was on board for giving themselves a raise of 47%. Yeah. I don't understand where is the logic coming from that these people need such a pay increase? They're already one of the highest paid assemblies in the entire country. Look at New Hampshire. New Hampshire's
they don't get paid.
They don't get paid at all. I think they haven't had a pay raise since the 1800s, if I'm not mistaken. I was going to
use that as an example of one of the few states that actually has it right there.
They do have it right.
I mean, to me, I want my politicians to pretty much not make this a career. To me, make your money legitimately, in other places. But if you are going to be making money out of it, you should be doing a good job. And just not giving you a raise for doing a lousy job or for business as usual, because that will never cut it in the private sector.
Yeah, let's take New Hampshire as an example here. I mean, they have the highest representation rate per person, or the lowest. Excuse me. They have the highest representatives in their assembly for the lowest amount of people they represent of any other state, and they get paid the least. Mm-hmm. They haven't had a pay raise since the 1800s, which we were just recently talking about. They essentially don't get paid, which is good.
Which means that the people that are going to be running for those offices are doing it for, to me, much more altruistic reasons, because they actually care about the system that they're in, and they probably have enough money, on their own to pretty much make it happen. And as I say, back in the day, these politicians would meet very infrequently, so it wasn't that much of a hassle, for them to go and do what they need to do here and then go back home and, make their money.
Right. But I also understand the argument that if you're going to be committing so much time, it at least has to be a wage that you can support.
I mean, it's to say, if they were,
because why should only rich people have the opportunity to run for office?
Yeah. Well,
you still got to take care of your family. You still got to put a roof over your head. You still got to clothe yourself. You still got to buy food.
Yeah, it's just ridiculous. I always laugh when
there's got to be
vote for their pay raises.
It's got to be a healthy middle ground somewhere within that. But I do like the New Hampshire approach.
Yeah, the New Hampshire.
I would go more towards there than to certainly what New York State is trying to do, become the highest paid assembly in the entire country, which is completely ridiculous.
It's one of the worst states. I mean, I've been looking at some polls, some articles, and pretty much they were New York and pretty much California, two of the biggest, socialists, pretty much states, pretty much out there, pretty much have the two worst places to live, pretty much in the
most
nation.
Corruption as well inside the assembly.
Pretty much. I mean, even in the town that I live in Greece, it's a lot of corruption going on with Bill Reilich. I'm marching a Veterans Color Guard, so I see him and Joe Roebuck pretty much at a lot of events. And I was at our town event, and Reilich looked like he was like in another planet, pretty much. And I would see him running pretty much for office, at least in Greece, pretty much the next election. I mean, because he betrayed a lot of the people in our veterans community. I mean, according to a budget that pretty much was supposed to go towards our Legion post, and the budget that came from Roebuck, and Reilich redirected it towards Braddock's Bay, and that left a lot of bitter pills in a lot of our veterans who pretty much have supported pretty much him over the years, and of course he also is the chair of the county Republicans, and he had that issue with the Comida, I think, if I'm mistaken, more corporate welfare type of stuff, where he spoke out against it and probably shouldn't have done it, so that put him pretty much on that path, pretty much there. But I mean, it doesn't matter what level these politicians are on. There's very few truly principled politicians that you can be like proud to say, that they're actually truly representing them. And some of them have good intentions and stuff like that. But ultimately, in the end, they have to compromise in order to get stuff done. And I'm not willing. That's why I don't run for office. People tell me I should, but I don't, because I'm not willing to compromise. I'm willing to tell people what they should be hearing, but that's not going to get you elected, unfortunately, because you have to play the game, and I'm not about playing the game.
I've been pondering running for Congress eventually.
I mean, that's a personal choice that, some people love playing that game. I don't.
I'm sure I would do it. I would be disheartened along the process. And if I actually got elected, it would probably be a kick right in the balls most of the time. Final topic we'll talk about here. Okay. New York State, we have a bet. To get on the ballot, we have to get 15,000 signatures.
Yeah, we more than doubled that.
We doubled that. Yet we still got challenges.
Yeah.
They tried to challenge our 32,000 signatures to try to keep Alex Merced. It did go nowhere. I read something that the challenges failed. Of course they did. But usually they won't even challenge if you're getting double the amount.
Yeah.
Are they really scared this year? I think they're really petrified.
The fact that challenging means that, we're getting their attention.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why it always says during petitioning season, you should, make yourself that bulletproof there by getting at least double the signatures. And that's obviously is going to help the Merced campaign. Well, it's Tony DeRazio. He got barely an over that amount, and he's being challenged. And I'm not sure how that's working out right now, because I haven't seen any updates on his site. I haven't really heard from him lately. So I'm kind of thinking it didn't turn out well, but I mean, I prefer to hear it from his mouth first, but he's going to probably eventually be on board with the Libertarian Party after this campaign, pretty much anyways. And we had to endorse some candidates that were technically not libertarians, but they were anti-establishment candidates and stuff like that in the spirit of libertarianism. I was actually on the vetting committee for Peter Vasquez, who I think is a solid guy. You know, he's pretty conservative, and we did grill him on some of the social issues, but he's pretty much a straight talker. He lived on the streets, so he's pretty much, you know, he's been screwed over by the city system. They don't like him, and he comes across as actually an anti-establishment candidate that actually I think has a great chance of winning, you know, and we decided to, you know, vet him in and back him pretty much because of that, because we don't like, you know, the conventional ways that things are being run, even if, you know, we do disagree on some issues there. I mean, we kind of look at the bigger picture pretty much.
Absolutely. So I think we're going to wrap it here. This is Life, Liberty, and the Pursuit of Happiness. Have a good night, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. Any final thoughts, Jack?
No. Take care, everyone, and hopefully I'll be on more of these podcasts in the future.
I'll talk them into coming back in. All right. Good night, everybody.
Okay, good night.